Hi, my name is Alice and welcome back to my syntax class. We are at lesson 3 and we are talking a little bit more about loops. In this lesson we will talk about for loops and while loops. Last lesson we talked a little bit about if loops. If loops were used for punishment and reward and also to go over all cases. Now let's see what happens in for loops. Let's say that we have a certain situation, such as you, person X, let's call you X for the meantime, want to enter the apartment. What do you have to do? You have to pass my syntax course. So, how do we say this? We say for all X, X must pass the syntax course in order to enter the apartment. So how will we do this in a loop? We'll say this. For X in people for X in people, we'll go over all the people in the world, and now we want to build a set of all the people who can enter the apartment. How will we build this set? Once again, we have to do these squiggly lines as we do in C++ syntax. Please remember that will be on the test. Okay, for X in people, when will somebody be eligible to enter the apartment? We'll do an if loop here. If grade on the syntax course of X is greater than or equal to 85, then we'll do the following. Then we'll say that X can enter. We don't have to say the apartment in this case, it's better to, but since I don't really have much space, then this is what we've got here. This loop, and now we have the external loop. So this was an example of a for loop. Now, let's do something else with a for loop. So Bob is a pretty messy person. Alice, me, am neat. I love it when everything is very, very neat and in place. So now I have to go over everything in Bob's room and make sure that it's in the right place. So how do we do this? I have to go over everything in his room, so I'll say for, now items in Bob's room, let's keep this for up because it's useful for us, for I in Bob's room By the way, I haven't said this before, but this means in. Please remember it. It almost looks like epsilon, only epsilon is a little bit rounder. For items in Bob's room, then what do we expect from this item? We'll have to do the following. Bob must place item where? In assigned place. Place item in, let's make an array just for fun because we all love arrays, don't we? In R at the I place, when R is the placement of everything in Bob's room. So this was the pseudocode. Now let's try to write it out as a real code using this, just for a little bit of help in functions and a little bit more in C++. So we said this. We have this for loop, but before that we need to initialize what's R. We have to understand what it is. So let's do the following. R, it's not really an array. It's more like a 3D array, correct? Is some sort of, it's of type int. Let's say that it's of type int, though we kind of know that there's no real way to classify everything, is new int, and how many objects do we have in the array? Let's say we have aleph objects in the array. Aleph being 2 at the power of aleph 0. I'll write that down so that you all remember this. Right over here. Here we go. The light, it's getting a bit dark here, but no big deal. Aleph equals 2 at the power of aleph 0, when aleph 0 is the number of natural numbers. That means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just keep on counting till infinity like this. Add 1 every time. That's the cardinality of natural numbers is aleph 0, and aleph is a cardinality of real numbers, which is all of the number line. We cannot count that. So this new int is aleph. And what will it represent? It will represent the placement of every single object in Bob's room. So this is when it's organized. Now this is organized. Now let's say that Bob, since he's not a very organized person, it's never organized. So let's call this. Let's make a new array, which we'll call this status at the time t. When status at the time t is a new array, is new int, once again, aleph. Now the status at time t is what there is in Bob's room at time t, where everything is placed at time t. Okay, status is never equal to array, is never equal to this r here, because Bob is sloppy. What could we do? So now Alice will require Bob to do the following. For, and all these aleph items are stuff in Bob's room. For I in room Bob, let's say it like this, room that belongs to Bob. How will we change status? We'll change status to do the following. We'll say that status t at the I place, we'll make this equal to our array r at the I place. And what does that really mean? That means that Bob has to take the current status and change it to the optimal status. So what was the good thing about this? We went over every single item in Bob's room. For loops are good when we want to have a similar, when we want to look at everything in a similar way. Not in, like in if loops, we had many different cases. Here we just want to place every item in its place. There's nothing special about certain items that they deserve to be placed in a place that is not their own place. So that was a for loop. Now let's go on to the while loop. While loops, as you can assume, they say what we are going to do while a certain something happens. Now I can erase this too. Or a better word for while in this case is as long as. For example, let's say the following. I, Alice, have a little bit of a drinking problem. I sometimes like to drink a little too much. And Bob doesn't like it when I drink. So what will we have? We'll have a while loop. While Alice doesn't drink too much, Alice is welcome to the apartment. How about that? But here's the problem. What's too much? How do we define too much? Let's define it like this. Too much will be, let's see. Let's make too much be 100 milliliters of alcohol. So, while alcohol that Alice drank, alcohol in Alice's body, Alice. Let's make this under 200 milliliters. That is pretty extreme. Then Alice is welcome to the apartment. So we have this little while loop here, which tells us when something happens, we're allowed to do this. We can go over this as much as we want. Now let's do another while loop. which will be slightly different. So, what are some more things that we know about Alice and Bob? Bob studies a lot, so does Alice study a lot, but Alice prefers efficiency and Bob prefers to use his time as much as possible to study. So, when there's a semester, Bob is always studying. So let's do a while loop for that. While there's a semester, Bob is studying, correct? And then while Bob is studying, what happens? Alice's friends cannot speak loudly, of course. So, while there's semester, Bob is studying. And then, now let's go on with this. While Bob is studying, then what can we say about guests? Volume. Then we want to say that the volume of all the guests is under 90 decibels. But we want to use a for loop now, just to practice what we did up till now. So, for x in apartment, then we'll have to say this: volume of x is less than or equal to 90 decibels. Now we have this, but we haven't closed in this loop yet, so let's close up that loop. But not with this color. We have to be consistent with our colors, correct? With this one. So we closed up this loop here. Good. So now we kind of understand how to use if, for, and while loops. Now this is going to be another subject that will be on the quiz in the end. Remember, you have to get at least 85 on the quiz and in order to enter the apartment. Also, these for and while loops are much simpler than the if loops, as you can see, but the if loops are more important in my opinion because they are rewards and punishments and cases when there are many possible cases. So please go over all of this material. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'd happily help you all, but I will not help you by answering the questions on the quiz. So please study hard, and until next time, bye-bye.